it short, so only about between 2 to 3 hours. You can have time after that to go out. Is that okay? Yeah, yeah. You're gonna listen to that. when do you want to finish, Joe?
Whenever you want.
No, of course, no. We can actually do it this way or that way, depending on because you want to go out. So
9 o'clock would be good.
Just before 9. We'll give it an hour. Yeah, yes. We've got 7:45 now. So if we leave here by 9:45, we're good for you. And good for me as well. Yes. Okay. So, well, Joe gave me 2 options, and I chose one, but he gave me a little time to prepare, so I don't have slides for you. But and I like it, like chit chat, so probably there'll be more lively discussions and stuff like that, as we used to do. Stop me when. You know what? I feel a bit nervous when I stand in front of that lecture theatre thing. You know? I'm used kind of like grouping around me and we have a chat and a laugh and stuff like that. But anyway, we'll try to make it light. The trials and tribulations and faith, which is probably a common subject, comes in and out many times. You hear a lot about it. You still, even though, have many questions in mind about a few things which we try to touch on today. And hopefully, when we walk out of here, the picture is clearer, but also, as much as our understanding gets better, how we deal with difficulties or difficult times will be clearer and better and less painful. Because obviously, any trials or tribulations is painful, whether we like it or not. Few things we need to establish first before we talk. What are the sources of the trials or tribulations? And I put the 2 words together because some people use them differently, but let us put them together, and as we go along, we'll find the difference between, if you want to differentiate the 2 words, the 2 meanings. Sources of the trouble. Let's put the word trouble as an overall thing, yeah? Or difficulties, or difficult times. Guess, what could be? Well, let's put them in big categories. And when we put them in big categories, we start to have branches from there and we understand it better. Right? So, if I say the world that we live in is a major source of trouble, would you agree with that or not? Yes. Obvious. And the reason for that is that the world that we live in at the moment has been put in the devil or the evil one as a result of the fall. So the whole earth being cursed by the fall of Adam. And all the consequences happened afterwards as a result. So the world is evil, and it's evil as a result of sin or the original sin or the fall and so on and so forth. So, but we live in it. Yeah? So the world is a source of trouble. Second source of trouble is myself. Agree? Yes, I can create problems for myself. And a lot of times I create these troubles for myself because of wrongdoing or because my nature is, that's how it is. Okay, we inherited that corrupt nature from our big father Adam. And as a result of that, we have a lot of troubles that comes from within. Okay? We will, these are the main titles, but we will touch on each of them separately. So I have the old corrupt nature within me. Another source of trouble is the devil. So the devil is there hunting all the time. He doesn't love you or me. He might pretend to be, but he doesn't. In fact, we know that. So if we put the 3 together, we inevitably, living in this life, we will go through tribulations, troubles, difficulties. Whether you've had it once up till now, more than once, you'll have it later. You're kind of in a mild one at the moment, later on you have a big one. You've seen people going through far more difficult time than you, and so on and so forth. You don't know even what is around the corner, correct? whether I am a good Christian or I'm an atheist or a Muslim, or any human being goes through difficulty. This is a law of life. We agree on that, don't we? But now, for us, from the Christian perspective, from us as Christians who believe in God and the Lord Jesus Christ, His only begotten Son, and the Holy Spirit lives within you and me, we should understand these rules so we can deal with them in a different way. Okay? So let's just touch on each of them separately for a while, and then we will talk about a few things and how we deal with them. Say, look at the world, or what we live in. Sources of trouble, natural disasters. And sometimes we ask ourselves, we ask God, why? Why, God? Why is this? Why? Why earthquakes happen? Why tsunami? Why a volcano here? Why in just last week or two was in Nepal? A big earthquake, and very poor people buried under the rubbles and getting them all dead. And why? And the big question is why? Correct? And that's in the bigger scale. It happens. We cannot help it. It's part of the whole equation. And it happened all over the years, not only this year or last century, the one before, is ever since creation. Ever since the fall, I would say. Because the whole world has been put in the evil one. We see diseases, don't we? We see problems, we see epidemics, we see outbreaks here and there. And over the last few years, some of you are doctors and understand that. A lot of outbreaks, different, even new bugs are coming up. And we fight this one, another one comes up, and so on and so forth. Natural disasters. And we are facing all of this. How vulnerable is a human being, isn't it? We have in the world around us not just the natural things, but we have the people that we live with. And these people, you start from the very close, people very close to you could be source of trouble, to the very far end, which your enemies perhaps. You can look at members of your family, sometimes can cause troubles to you, whether they like it or not, or they meant it or not. Yes? And you move out, you have friends, and sometimes friends can cause troubles to you. You have colleagues at work, in uni. You move out, you have people living that you live with, and the society, and your dealings every day. You deal with people, and people themselves can be source of trouble. And these trouble can be momentarily, just for a short while, short-lived, or some of these troubles they cause to you can be very long-lived, can leave scars on you. Some people suffer scars from other people for the rest of their lives. And the examples are many. We all know that, don't we? And again, we ask the question, why? Also, other things that in the world is circumstances. And the circumstances, when we think of things that perhaps I don't have a lot to do with, is, I give you many examples. Yes? Like somebody who is born with a certain handicapping or a certain congenital problem or a certain difficulty. Nothing to do, it's not done anything yet. They're born blind, for example, and we will come to these examples in a minute. Yeah? Circumstances like I'm born to a poor family compared to somebody else who's born in a very rich family. Somebody is born in Ethiopia or Nigeria in the middle of big troubles, yes, and somebody else is born in England or found his parents or parents like yourself living in here, comfortable, nice life. Nothing to do with you. I haven't done anything to create this for myself. I just found myself there. Correct? So again, why me? Comes the question. So these just examples of the world. If we put it under this big category or big headings, the world, yeah? And then we look at myself. How can I be a source of trouble for my own self? There are things that we do on purpose because our corrupt nature is pushing me to do these bad things, and I do it, and I fall into trouble. And there are things that I do unwillingly or out of ignorance, and again leads me to trouble. Correct? We all experience that on a bigger scale or a smaller scale, but we believe it happens. Yes? And we all know that you should come every week, you see, you get people in. We all know that my old corrupt nature within me, which we all know quite a lot about now, pushes me or makes me desire to do the wrong thing from time to time. And when I do it, I get into trouble. And this trouble could be short-lived or sometimes long-lived. And we've got the examples. Yeah? I'm not going to mention them because some of them, I'm sure you know a lot. Perhaps you know more than me. So that is myself. So what is the and then the devil. Big source of trouble for you and me, especially for you and me, for the children of God. He doesn't like you. He doesn't like you. Yeah? If you call yourself the child of God, he is your enemy, straight away. He might pretend to be the friend, but he will never be. Okay? So, if I start with the devil, because he will use the other two to work against you. And I think at some point in this meeting, we had a talk, like, I don't know, last year or the year before, I cannot remember, about the devil and his allies. They work with him. He uses these allies to work against you, to get you down, to make you fall. In fact, to lose your eternity, to lose your life, to kill you, because he is a murderer. Who described him as a murderer? The Lord himself. Yeah? If we go to chapter 8 of the St. John's Gospel, you find that when he talked to the Pharisees, he told them that your father is the devil and he's a murderer. He's a killer. He's a liar and murderer. There's no dispute about that. So we have to be aware of him. But in the middle of all this, I ask myself, okay, I'm the child of God, and God is in overall control, and I should or supposed to be protected. So if God is in control of everything, why He's letting me go through troubles? And maybe that's the big question when we fall into trouble. Don't you agree with that? I'm sure all of us will think that way. God, why you leave me to go down that route? Why you leave me struggle or suffer? And big question comes up. And that is when we start talking about faith. But in order to marry the two things in my mind or in my heart, I need to understand few things, few facts, which one of them is, as we agreed, the source of troubles. Okay? So when we finish with source of trouble, we need to understand certain things about God and how He deals with these troubles and how He, where is He from these troubles when I suffer, when I go under them. First of all, God puts laws and regulations, or laws or rules, and the first one to respect what He has put is Himself. So if God has put a rule in, He's the first one to respect that, to follow that rule. You cannot bend it. So you cannot say, okay, God, why are you allowing this and that? And there is a rule to control the whole universe, to control the life, and so on and so forth. Yes, there are exceptions, but exceptions are not the rule. So the rule is the rule, and then there are some exceptions that we will talk about. But also, we need to understand something about God when He looks at you and me. We are His children, and He has got a plan or a purpose in the life of each of us, and this plan or purpose is far bigger than the life that we live in this world. So His ultimate goal for you and me is to achieve that plan. In the middle between A and B, you will go through whatever, good times, bad times, tribulations, difficult strides, and so on. But God wanted to hold your hand and get you through the best course up to the final point, which is the ultimate plan of your life. Okay? So that's another fact we need to understand it here, and that will help us to comprehend or accept what happens around us. Also, another fact, God more than often or usually acts differently to our thoughts and ways. The way we think is completely different from the way that God thinks. The way we see things can be completely different from how He sees things. The two could marry the closer I come nearer to Him. But if I'm at a distance from Him, my thoughts and my ways will continue and will stay away from His thoughts and means of doing things. Unless I get closer to His heart, closer to Him, understanding Him more, these here and His will not get together. So the difficulty happens. I'm confused. I'm perplexed with what's going on around me. Okay? So bear in mind, God's way of doing things and dealing with things and plan for things are quite often different from mine. Okay? That's rule number 3. Rule number 4, which is very important, God respects your will and does not intrude. What does that mean? God respects your will and will leave you to do according to your will what you want to do, and He will not interfere unless you specifically ask Him to do so. Make sense? Otherwise, He's an intruder or intruding into your freedom, and He's not like that. Respects your freedom completely. That's how He created us. We've got free will, independence, and so on. Agree up till now? These are principles. And I will give you some examples, and then we'll open the Bible and look at certain verses that will actually support us as we go along. Another thing we need to know before we go along with that, before I give you the examples, is that God and you and the trouble, He could do certain things for you. If you are a child, a true child of God, or one of 3 things will happen. Either He will protect you from having this, going through that trouble. So He knows that He will have to protect you because you cannot handle it. Or He will actually let you go through, with His permission, will let you go through this, but will help you through the trouble. Okay? So either He will protect you, means that you will not go through, you don't experience that kind of trouble from the beginning, or you do experience the trouble, but He is protecting you all the way through until you get out of it or you overcome it. Okay? Because not always we can get out of troubles. Sometimes we go through them and we overcome them. Okay? And if he lets me suffer and he supports me, he does that for a purpose. And that's perhaps what we need to know better. What is the idea of suffering or going through painful situations or going through difficulties? And so if we understand all these things, perhaps my acceptance to what's going on and my dealing with it is better than before. And I tell you, it's a lifelong process, actually, how I deal with things. My personal dealing with difficulties at the moment is far better than 10 years ago. It's far, far better than 20 years ago. And I'm sure it will get better as I grow spiritually and my experience with God is strengthened. And I hope the same with you. But obviously, we vary from one another how speedily we grow in our relationship with God. Yeah? And that depends on your desire, how you want to build up that relationship. Okay. I have an example, actually, which is perhaps will give us an idea about what everyone goes through. Somebody, and the Bible actually is not short of examples from all what we've discussed today. Abraham. Abraham, first, when we read about Abraham as a man of faith, first thing that we read about him, that God called him and said, come and you go wherever I show you. Which means that he follows God, not knowing where he's going, and this is a sign of strong faith, strong belief in God. I know that God's leading me to somewhere good, so I'll follow him. He said, so I'll follow him. I don't have to know where I'm going. Although none of us like to go anywhere without knowing where you're going. If I take Michael and say, Michael, come with me. He says, where are we going? I said, don't ask me, just come with me. I will just take you to somewhere and you have to follow me and it's good for you. He will not be happy. Abraham wasn't like that. He was very happy. Well, he just followed. But as he following this step, he got a promise. And as he got the promise was great. Look at the stars and count them. He started to count. Couldn't count them. Plenty of them. Okay, hold on, Abraham. Stop counting. Yeah? I know you can't count them because they are countless. But as much as you have counted now or even more, that's what your descendants will be. Fine. How old were you, Abraham? 75. Doesn't matter. God said so. We'll do it. Followed him. And he followed him. And as he followed him, nothing happens. Yeah? But Abraham, halfway through, starts to think, or maybe he lost faith a little bit. No. Or he tried to help God, maybe. He did few things that got him into trouble. And that's how the self can get you into trouble, as I mentioned earlier. Abraham, an example of what happened to him, when he lied about his wife, when he went to Egypt. We know the story, don't we? So he lied about it and said, she's my sister. And as a result of that, God stopped it, but his wife nearly taken away from him to become a wife of the Pharaoh, correct? But God interfered and stopped. And that takes me to the point that, because the question comes in your mind, yes, we said that we sometimes get ourselves into troubles. Will God get me out of the trouble that I got myself in? Yes, He does. If you are truly in a good relationship with Him, He will not leave you to drown out of your own mistakes. He will get you out. At the right moment, He will get you out. And that's what happened with Abraham. It happened twice, actually. Yes? Another problem, Abraham, the man of faith, the big man of faith, father of faith, got himself into big trouble when he started to help God to fulfill the promise and listen to his wife. Okay, let's get another wife, get a son from that. That's it. That's what God meant. That son, Ishmael, was a source of trouble in future. Yeah, he started to tease his little brother, the son of the promise, and caused problems in the house. Yeah, God interfered and told him what to do. So, yes, sometimes us, me and you, or actually a lot of times, if I compare myself to Abraham, of course, I would have done it far more than him, get myself into trouble. But will God get me out of the trouble? Yes. But I will come to the end, towards the end, when we see how I can get God's help to get me out of my own trouble and so on. We'll come to this. So this is an example. Another example is Joseph. When God actually gave Joseph the first dream, he was a young lad. So the first dream is, yes, you will be a big person, even your father, your mother, your brothers will bow before you, and fine, great, he's got that, yes. Next thing happens to him, he's in the ditch, straight away. And after that, sold as slave. Where is that dream? Where is it gone? Yeah? Never mind, Joseph, you'll be fine. So I've got a job in the house of Potiphar, that person. Fine, it's reasonably okay now. I think things are getting better. He thinks to himself. And suddenly, this evil wife of that man trying to get him into trouble. But he still stood fast in his faith and held on. And he said, forbid that I do this evil in the eyes of God. I cannot do it. And he flee away. But as a result of that, he went into prison. You see, how many years on? I think people say it's about 13 years before Joseph actually had the dream fulfilled. I cannot remember the figures exactly. He spent some years in the prison, and so on and so forth. As Joseph. David was anointed king by Samuel when he's a young lad. How many years before he became actually practically a king? Anyone knows?
20. About 20, 30.
About 17 years. Running around, escaping from Saul, who's trying to kill him, nearly killed a few times, and nearly lost heart. He thought he's dead. He said it a couple of times. Eventually, God fulfilled it. Why God does that? Why God sometimes let me go through all this? If He wants to, why doesn't He take me from A to B straight away without all this hassle? Maybe that's the question that we need to answer. And if we understand it well, we will be better off. Yes? And that actually makes me come to the point which we really need to understand today, or answer today, is the benefit of these trials or the difficulties or difficult times that we go through. What is the benefit of it? Why should I? I'm really glad and I get very excited when God answers me or tell me and tell you through His Word all the answers to my questions very clearly, and He's pointing it out. All what I need to do is to get my heart open to His Word and accept it and live with it. Let us just open a few verses together and we'll see what is the benefit of the trial. Why we go through it. Somebody like James, when he wrote his epistle, in the very first chapter, says something very weird. Anyone remembers? Can you open the epistle? St. James, chapter 1.
Rejoice when you fall into various trials.
Thank you. What did he say?
Rejoice when you fall into various
Very
trials.
weird, isn't it? Come on, how come I rejoice when I'm going through difficult times? Huh? But he said so. But when we complete the verse, probably we'll understand. And that's what I wanted to read now.
Knowing that the testing of your faith produces patience.
Ah. Yes, exactly. I like it because you said it by heart without looking at the book. That's how we should do. Okay, can you read it again to all? Verse 2. Chapter 1, verse 2.
My brethren, count it all joy when you fall into various trials, knowing that the testing of your faith produces patience. But let patience have its perfect work, that you may be perfect and complete, lacking nothing.
Exactly. See the end? What did he say? Perfect,
Lacking
complete, lacking nothing. Remember when I said God has got a purpose for all of us to be complete and perfect and lacking nothing. And there's a way to get there. It's not an easy way. It is not an easy way. Somebody will open the book of Romans, or the epistle to the Romans, chapter 8 and verse 28 and 29 together, the two verses. And we'll see what is the perfect, complete, and lack nothing means.
Sorry, where? Romans
8, verse 28.
And we know that all things work together for good to them that love God, to them who are the called according to his purpose.
29.
For whom he did foreknow, he also did predestinate to be conformed to the image of his Son, that he might be the firstborn among many brethren.
Excellent. Have you got it now? Complete, lacking nothing, means conform to the figure or the image of his Son. Who is the Son? The Lord Jesus Christ. So God's purpose for you and me is to take us through that journey, to reshape us, to become very much like his Son. You got that bit? That's why in verse 28, which you've just read now, it says, all things
Work together for good to them who are the called, to work together for good to them that love God, to them who are the called according to his purpose.
Exactly. In these two verses, there are many things, many stops that we need to look and watch. First of all, he says all things. All things, good and bad. Yes? Good times and bad times. Easy times and difficulties. All things work together. So it's a complicated equation, complex equation. God put it together and then equals, x plus y equals perfect at the end. That's how he does it. But there's a condition there. To those who
Love God.
love God. You see that condition? So he wants to conform you to the image of his Son if you love him. But he will use everything to get you from here to there, from that image to the image of Christ. Yes? That's why St. James says, rejoice. Because this is the path. Because that path will polish you. We develop patience in you, and as part of the process, patience is very important because it will produce a complete person out of you. And that complete person is in the image of the Lord Jesus Christ. You become a small little Jesus going around. Wonderful in the Negro. That's it. That's how he is. That's what he wants all of us to be. Jesus Christ. I see Myrna, I see Jesus Christ. I see you, I see you, and so on. I look at the mirror, Lord Jesus Christ. Yeah, that's it. He wants to conform us to that image. Yes, we're not there yet, but he's in the process of doing so. You got it? So difficulties are important to do that. But God has got a rule here for you not to worry. And that rule is present in chapter 10 of the first epistle to the Corinthians. Who's ready?
What verse?
13. How about that? I thought you could get it yourself.
No temptation has overtaken you except such as is common to man. But God is faithful, who will not allow you to be tempted beyond what you are able, but with the temptation will also make the way of escape, that you may be able to bear it.
So if God is watching from a distance, and you are going through temptations or difficulties, he will make sure that you are not tempted beyond your ability to handle that temptation. Excellent rule. So that is reassuring for me. So nothing will happen to me beyond or above my ability to handle. You got it? Okay, so that's an important rule which we need to remember, because that will take the fear out of me. The fear that I might go through certain things. Sometimes I see things happening to people around me that scares me a lot. Thinking, if I am there, I will not be able to handle that. But here we are. He's telling you that each of us has got his own measure. He's got own limits. And God is watching not to let you be tempted or tried beyond that limit. Make sense? Very important truth to understand, because that is very reassuring. You know, every time I look at somebody who's going through difficulties, whether it's being ill or financial difficulties or losing someone who's dear to him or something like that, and they get scared. What if this happens to me? Immediately I remind myself with that verse 13 of chapter 10 of the first book of the Epistle to the Corinthians. Yeah? So it's important. And we have important to believe in that. Don't just read words. These words in the Bible are not to be read, but they are to be lived. Yeah? That's important. Believe me. Believe him actually, not me. Yeah? Okay. What else? What is the benefit of me going through trials? We said the patience and the growth. Let us look at the first epistle of St. Peter and chapter 1. And he said it in a very nice way. Okay? Chapter 1 of the first epistle of St. Peter. Okay? He says here, from verse 5, somebody will read. Who's read? Verse 5.
Who are kept by the power of God through faith for salvation, ready to be revealed in the last time.
Carry on, carry on.
In this you greatly rejoice, though now for a little while, if need be, you have been grieved by various trials. The genuineness of your faith, being much more precious than gold that perishes, though it is tested by fire, may be found to praise, honor, and glory at the revelation of Jesus Christ.
Thank you. Say that. Let the last two verses again, please, Carol.
In this you greatly rejoice, though now for a little while, if need be, you have been grieved by various trials.
Grieved and
by various
trials. Yes.
That the genuineness of your faith, being much more precious than gold that perishes, though it is tested by fire, may be found to praise, honor, and glory at the revelation of
Thank you. He's mentioned 4 or 5 words here. Very good. Very important to remember. First of all, that you will be grieved by trials. And why? For the sake of strengthening, purifying our faith, which, as his description here, is more precious than gold. You know what it means here? Why gold? Why fire and gold? Let's have the trial as fire and the faith is the gold. Gold, well, that gold actually is not pure gold. That is mixed with other elements in it. But pure gold it's got certain characteristics, much better than that, which is soft, actually flexible. You can manipulate it. Yeah? It is shiny, so shiny. So, in order to purify the gold, get other elements out of it, you need to put it into high temperature fire. And that is me and you, or our faith, when we go through trials. Our faith will strengthen, becomes like gold. we become very flexible in the hands of God, and we become very shiny to reflect His image. That's what he meant there. So that's the importance of trials, to strengthen, to purify, to root down my faith. And he says we will grieve, we will suffer a little bit. Yes? Another verse he mentioned, actually, St. Peter, in the same epistle, and chapter 4 and verse 12. Who else can read? Mark, have you got it?
1 second. Chapter 4, verse
4 and verse 12.
Verse 12. Beloved, do not think it strange concerning the fiery trial which is to try you, as though some strange thing happened to you, but rejoice to the extent that you partake of Christ's sufferings, that when His glory is revealed, you may also be glad with exceeding joy.
Exactly. You see what happens? The trials here is doing what? Testing your faith. Read it again. First verse. Only 12.
Beloved, do not think it strange concerning the fiery trial which is to try you, as though some strange thing happened to you.
Yeah?
But rejoice to the extent that you partake of Christ's sufferings, that when His glory is revealed, you
So it's trying, it's testing you.
Glad.
That's how it tests your faith. Without me going through difficulty, how would I know that I have strong faith? I believe in God, that He's with me, He's helping me, He's not forsaking me. Unless I go through this difficulty and I feel His hand lifting me up and supporting me all the way through, whether He will deliver me out of it or will take me through, I'm still strong. I will not. How would you know that you've got enough knowledge without sitting the exam and getting your marks at the end of it? Would you know? You might believe so, but the exam is the final thing that will tell you, Michael, you're a doctor now. Okay? You've studied enough, and what you have done qualifies you to get through. Exactly it. So trials are a test. And that's why God allows them to happen to us. But also He allows this for something else. When we behave like naughty boys and girls, sometimes He will let these things happen to us, like a father who wants to correct the path of his children. We call it chastising us. Yes? And if you open somebody, Joe, the book of Hebrews, chapter 12. Chapter 12. And verse 6.
For whom the Lord loves, He chastens and scourges every son whom He receives.
Yes, say it again loudly.
For whom the Lord loves, He chastens and scourges every son whom He receives.
Exactly, you got it. So sometimes He will let me go through these things out of what? Love, because He wants to correct my path. Because remember, His ultimate plan for me is to get me from this current image to the image of His only begotten Son. And He's got to do that. If I see my son Peter misbehaving, I have to correct him. And sometimes I have to be harsh on him to correct him properly. That's exactly our Heavenly Father sometimes has to deal with us. Another thing is, which is to do with me strengthen, be strong in faith and grow spiritually. He does that to do us to grow, the spiritual growth. So as we strengthen our faith, we grow spiritually. And there is a very nice verse in the book of Deuteronomy. I'm tired of you today actually opening the book many times, but anyway, who's ready there? And chapter 32 and verse 11. Who haven't read yet? Maybe, Mervin, have you read?
Never.
Ready? David?
No, sorry.
Or Yusuf?
What would you say?
Deuteronomy 32 and verse 11.
As an eagle stares up,
As what? Loudly, huh?
as an eagle stares up in its nest, hovers over its young, spreading out its wings, taking them up,
Yeah.
carrying them on its wings. So the Lord alone led him, and there was no foreign god with him.
Yeah. Do you anyone understand that verse? Hmm? You know the eagle? Eagle, I got the little chicken. I got a nest. You know how he teaches his little chicks to fly? Hmm? That's exactly what it does. He goes with this big wing, you know, that eagle, huh? And does that to the nest. Still the nest, just shook it, rock it out. What happens to the little chicks? Will fall out. And out is very high up in the tree or somewhere else. Yeah? What will happen if the eagle leaves them? They will perhaps die. But will the eagle do that? No. Well, he does that and then quickly fly down and then spreads out the wings and take them on the wing and put them back in the nest. And he does that a few times. That's what God does with us. Sometimes he lets us go through trials, troubles. Yes? As if He's leaving us. He's forsaking me. I'm losing it. I've lost. No, you're not lost. He will not leave you until you're lost. He is the eagle and you are the chick. That he will actually split the wing out and he will hold you up, put you back in the nest until you learn how to fly. That's how he teaches how to fly spiritually, how we grow spiritually, how we get closer to him. Okay? Also, that will lead me to the last point. The benefit of trials is that trials, as all this happens, as we describe them now, they draw me nearer to him. Because in the midst of the trouble, I cry out to him more than the good times. And it's very, I'm sure all of you know that, and perhaps you experience it, especially in the exam times. You pray more than in the middle of the year. It's not supposed to be like that, but it does. And as you do that, you experience his hand with you, and when you get out of it, you talk to yourself, you learn, perhaps I should stay close to God because he's wonderful. Because he's done very good to me. Because he's actually helped me through 5 or 6 years and now I'm a doctor. Yeah? He took me through the difficult times and now I'm actually a very good person, respectable, and I've done what I've achieved my dream. Without him I wouldn't have done. And yes, I prayed to you, God, only in the middle of the difficulties. And I neglected you or went astray when I was comfortable. But now I'm learning how to be with you all the time. Yeah? So there are a lot of benefits from the trials. To be honest with you, put it that way. Without trials and tribulations in my life, I will never be conformed to his image. Because my old nature will overcome me. And I will be like anybody else in the world. That's why he lets me go through these things. And we've touched on not every point, but the main points why trials, difficulties are important. But one main thing, which is practically, when I'm going through difficulty, what shall I do? Number one, back to the first rule, I need to understand or to find out whether what I'm going through now is out of my own making, or is it God is permitting me to go through that for a good purpose, or is it the devil is trying me badly and I need the protection so badly? So first of all, I need to examine myself. Yeah? And in fact, St. Peter himself as well, when he wrote his first epistle, he told them, none of you will suffer again as a result of wrongdoing. I cannot remember the exact translation, but if you read it, in verse 15 and chapter 4. Quickly, somebody get verse 15, chapter 4, first epistle to St. Peter, of St. Peter's.
Verse what? Which verse?
Which verse is 15? Anyone read? Quick. It's one line. Mike?
But let none of you suffer as a murderer, a thief, an evildoer, or a busybody in other people's matters.
That's it. So basically, you can suffer as a result of your own wrongdoing. So I need to examine myself. And to examine myself clearly, I have to be honest with myself in the light of the Word, in the presence of God. That's how I examine. God, I'm going through difficulty now. Tell me if that was because of me or because something that you want me to go through for my own benefit. And I will listen and I will do whatever you like me to do. Okay? If it is, if I discover it is mine, the immediate thing I do is to repent and ask for His help and protection, because He still can get you out of trouble, which we touched a little bit on when we gave the example of Abraham. Yeah? So it doesn't mean that it's my own doing that He will wash His hands out of me. No, you cry out to Him, you are still, remember, we are His children. I cannot see my son or daughter going through difficulty, even though she's put herself through, and then leave her. I will immediately go there and help her out. Yes? That's one thing. The second thing, when I go through problems or difficulties or hard times, and I know for sure it's not of my own doing, I pray to God to show me. First of all, I pray to Him to lift it off, to take it out of me. I cannot handle it. And if He doesn't answer me with the positive thing as I would love it to be, I will ask Him to tell me what is the purpose of it, why. And I'll give you one more example. I know I'm taking a long time, but we're nearly there. Let us open the second epistle of St. Paul to the Corinthians, in chapter 12. Good. Verse 7, and somebody will read 7, 8, 9, and 10. 4 verses. Who's got it ready? The girls are really faster than the boys. Go on.
Chapter, sorry, 12.
12?
No, I had it.
Yeah, you've got, I've seen you have it. Yes, yes.
Unless I should be exalted above measure through the abundance of the revelations, there was given to me a thorn in the flesh, the messenger of Satan to buffet me, lest I should be exalted above measure. For this thing I besought the Lord thrice, that it may depart from me. He said unto me, My grace is sufficient for thee, for my strength is made perfect in weakness. Most gladly, therefore, I will rather glory in my infirmities, that the power of Christ may rest upon me.
You know what? This paragraph, or these few verses that we read now, sums up almost half of what we said today. This experience of St. Paul, one thing it shows you, that God permitted him to go through this suffering for his own protection, lest he exalt, because of he had a lot of revelations. St. Paul was a great man of God. God showed him a lot of things. He took him to third heaven. In the same chapter he says that. But in order to protect him from boasting and becoming self-righteous, he allowed him to have this. But Paul did something which we all have to do. Don't shy out to pray to God to lift off the trouble from you. Do it, because He will many times do it, take it away from you, but some other times He will tell you, I'm not taking it because of this, because that's good for you. And that's what he did here. So Paul didn't say, okay, I've got this problem that we don't know, it's a physical problem that he suffered from. Nobody knows exactly what it is, but I've got it, I'm going to accept it, I'm not going to ask God to lift it off. But he didn't do that. He prayed. prayed how many times?
Sorry.
3 times. Yeah? But God answered him and he says, no, you keep it. Enough for you, my grace to you. That's more than enough. And you keep it because it's for your own good. Not because I want to torture you. Because I want to keep you good. That's an important thing that we need to learn, all of us. Sometimes God will permit you to go through difficulty for your own benefit. Because He loves you so much. Okay? So, first step, I examine myself, lest or just in case the problem is of my own wrongdoing. A second step, I pray to Him to take it away from me. A third thing, if He does not take it away from, I ask Him to explain to me. And the fourth thing, when I actually get the answer very clear, I rejoice. And I thank Him more. Thank you for what I'm going through. Because as St. James says, he says, rejoice when you go through different tribulations. You got it? So that's how we build up our faith. So don't always think, oh, I'm going through difficulty, why God? Yes, we are allowed to ask, why God? But ask it with a very pure heart, the heart of the son or the daughter who's really close to his or her father. That's important. He will answer you. You got it now? So we've got the principles of troubles, where God is it from, what is my role in it, and how I deal with it. I think that's enough for tonight. We can have some questions before you go for a meal anyway. Thank you.
Uncle, was it take it, ask him to take it, ask him to explain it?
Ask him to take it. Say, I'm going through financial difficulty, for example. Or say, I'm suffering from a certain illness. I'll just sit like that and say, okay, Ashkurak Ya Rabb, this is a bad problem, but I have to keep it. That's, you gave it to me. God doesn't give you bad things just for the sake of it. There's no good father that gives his son or daughter a bad thing just for the sake of it. Yeah? But you ask, God, help me. I'm tired of it. It's a big burden on me. Lift it off for me. He probably will take it off. But He might not. But if He doesn't, He will answer you why. And if you don't get the answer, keep nagging. Keep knocking on the door. I need the answer. Tell me why you haven't taken it off. And He will tell you. And you'll feel more comfortable and happy. Okay? Any more questions?
I've been reading recently about David, and I got to the bit where he did his big sin with Bathsheba. Right? No, that's the city. Bathsheba.
Yeah.
And then he repents and he confesses to Nathan, and then God says to him, some stuff that's going to happen now as a consequence of his sin, and so.
The sword will never leave your house, and your yes.
Yeah, and his son ends up killing his other son and things like that.
Correct.
Is this God chastening David, or is this a punishment, or is it a consequence of sin that has nothing to do with God?
It's a consequence of sin.
Okay.
Yeah. It is a consequence of sin, but the good thing for us, we've got the advantage over David at the moment because we live in that grace era that the Lord has taken all the consequences of our sins on Him. When He forgives, He will forget, and it's all done on God. Yeah? But the only thing is, something might not be completely taken away. Say, somebody who has stolen something. Yes, as a result of that, God will, when he repents, God will forgive and He will forget. But the society will not forgive or forget. They will punish him. They put him in jail for 2-3 years and so on. Yeah. So
I ask this question every time this topic comes up, but every time it's not every trial and tribulation. Like this talk, we've assumed that we've come to the conclusion that trials and tribulations better us and make us more more spiritual. But not everybody comes out the other end of a trial or tribulation closer to God, or as a better person. So surely they can't all, the whole purpose of trials and tribulations can't just be, are they not some sort of tests as well? Because if they were just to better us, then everybody would come out the other side closer to God, everybody would, do you understand what I'm trying to say?
That's why we had the talk.
Yeah.
This is a very good question. Because for us, understanding this, understanding how the world, how circumstances, how myself function in this world will actually help me in... Sorry, because it's irritating. I just switched off and then I'll get to you. Yeah. Understanding that will actually help me through the trials or the tribulations in the right path. Somebody else not to do with God will be broken, as you said, will fall out. So your relationship with God all the way through will make the end or the outcome of these trials or tribulations for your own benefit and good compared to somebody else who has no relationship with God. Have I answered you or not? I hope when this subject comes up again, it's clear in your mind, or all your minds anyway, because it's a good question. Yeah? Anything else? So, from now on, we don't fear trials or tribulations, but we know how to handle them. But we also remember that we will never live in this life without them. It's a must, it's part of it. Yeah? Okay, thank you very much. Have a nice evening tonight. And thanks to Merna that